Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock their potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another great guest. He is somebody I recently connected to at an event. And when I heard him speak, I was very shocked. I gravitated to his message, and I did a deep dive and found out more about what he does. And I was very fascinated with what he does, his journey, and also what he's doing right now, which is, I found, was a shocker. It was a big twist as to what he used to be doing. That's why I really wanted him on my show. He calls himself the happily former CEO in the field of financial securities. So much so, he's an expert in that area, where he's on so many different board of directors from the university level to professional levels. He also helped create the bachelor program in financial planning at the University of Utah Valley. Nowadays, he consults, he speaks, he lectures all over the place on business and investing as well. But not only that, he spends a lot of his current time on, wait for it, children's books. Like, I didn't even think that was a natural path, but he actually went there. So I'm very fascinated about that. And with children's books, he's creating those stories that are positive and also productive to really motivate and encourage kids to follow their dreams, which is something that's very, very important. So please welcome award-winning author and also the happily former CEO, Mr. Craig Porter.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Fong. It's wonderful to be here with you, and I'm very excited about this. And I too, very interested in what you've been doing and all the things best-selling author. My gosh, it's author to author here, which is always fun for me. But thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for being here. It's always a joy speaking to other people who's very successful in what they do. And for you, you're an expert in financial securities. So share with us that journey. How did you go from what you were, from deciding on a career, and how did you get into financial securities, and then all of a sudden children's books?
I have to go back to my grandmother. My grandmother, when I was young, she was an entrepreneur, and she kind of took me under her wing at a very young age, and doing things as simply as, I remember 5 and 6 years old. She had a beauty shop, and she had some rental properties. She was an entrepreneur, and I would help her count out the money at the end of the day. So here I am, 5, 6 years old, counting out the ones, the fives, the tens, the 20s, the change. We'd get the little binders and roll the coins in little coin sleeves, and then my job was, now this is shocking to me, but we lived in a small town, southwestern Kentucky. We lived in a very small town. Everybody knew everybody. But at 6 years old, she was allowing me to take the deposit to the bank and put in the night deposit box slip. So a lot of responsibility at a very young age, but it kind of made me realize that at that very young age that money made the world go around. And so as I got older and realized that I enjoyed numbers, and I enjoyed business and learning all those things that go along with it, I kind of gravitated towards wanting to be my own boss. And I found that the fastest way to do that for me was finance. So I got one of my very first jobs back at the tender age of 22 years of age, and right out of college, and went to work on the precious metals desk for a small firm and sold gold and silver and precious metals. And boy, that was introduction into the world of finance and investing, because that's a product that absolutely has to be sold. But continued with that. Got fortunate enough to meet the right people and got my securities licenses, and became a financial advisor and built a fairly successful company. And when everything was said and done, we actually, by the time I had retired, we were managing somewhere in the neighborhood of about $250 million in assets for clients. The firm is now grown beyond that and is bigger and has more employees, but I am a very happily former CEO. I miss the camaraderie, the day-to-day of working in the financial field and doing those things. And but I don't miss the what I called adult babysitting. I got tired of the adult babysitting. But it was good. It was a good journey. And then, getting into children's book, actually, I felt like there was a big lack of positive, inspiring stories for children that drove them to, like what my grandmother did with me, instilled curiosity about how the world worked or how certain aspects of the world work. And so my stories are all geared towards trying to be positive, and we've been very fortunate. This first book kind of has blown us out of the water with what's being said about it and some of the awards that it's won. So that, in a nutshell, that's my journey. It started with my grandmother, and I loved helping people. I really
Awesome.
loved helping people, and even as a financial advisor, it was all about getting our clients from point A to point B, and point B being whatever their financial goals were. And sometimes having to tell our clients that, you can't necessarily get to point B from where you're at. So we need to maybe formulate a new plan. So there was a lot of that that went on in some of the planning and securities that I did growing up.
Wow.
Or in the industry.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, how many people can say that at the age of 6, they were already dealing with other people's money?
Right.
You were already on your path to becoming a financial securities person at the age of 6. I mean, it's amazing that it was exactly what you wanted to do.
Yeah, it just clicked. I was very fortunate. It just clicked. And again, I really give a lot of credit to my grandmother, because she took me in and introduced me to the banker, and took me to City Hall and introduced me to the mayor, and she would take me around town and introduce me to people, and kind of taught me the right way to meet people, and showed me how to be respectful, and yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I mean, I was the quintessential little Southern boy with all the politeness and charm and Southern hospitality that went along with it.
Was there any point in that journey where you all of a sudden got a shocker as to what really happens? Or have you been experiencing what really happens even at the age of 6 and understood it all, kind of thing?
No, I would say no. I wish it would have been that simple. That would have shortened my learning curve a great deal. But I think one of the big shockers for me, and it happened probably in my teens, was when I realized that unlike a lot of the people that I met in my small town at a young age, and granted that is not indicative. I mean, I was very capsulated. I mean, it was a small community, so everybody knew everybody. But I think when my family moved, and I moved to a much larger city, and had interactions with people that were less reputable, that first time I had a dealings with someone who wasn't completely honest with me, set me back. And I remember having to deal with that. And I also remember going back and thinking, okay, I have a decision. I can either continue to be honest, or I can play like everybody else seems to be playing. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what, I got to take the higher road, because I wouldn't be able to keep it all straight if I wasn't honest with people. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, something my grandmother told me. She taught me that my grandparents raised me pretty much, but they taught me that, it's real hard to keep track of a lie, but if you're telling the truth, it's simple. And that kind of stuck with me. And so when I realized that not everybody was going to be honest in their dealings with me, I became more cautious. And I think that's, that first moment you become a bit jaded in mm-hmm. life, is when someone doesn't deal with you the way you feel like they should have. We all have a choice at that point in time. We all have a choice. We can exercise our integrity and say, all right, that was terrible. That was terrible. That happened to me. I can have a choice. I can become like the thing I hate, if that makes me feel like that's how I'm going to cope, or I can take the higher road and say, I'm just going to keep being who I am. Mm-hmm. And fortunately for me, I made the decision to just keep being who I was in the face of adversity and those that weren't always going to be completely honest with me. And then as I got older, of course, more of those interactions were that way. And you realize not everybody is going to treat you squarely. Not everybody is going to treat you fairly. And a lot of it I've learned as I've gotten older is perspective. You know, what one person's truth isn't necessarily another's, you know, so it becomes a matter of choice for the individual. How am I going to behave regardless of how others act towards me?
Mm-hmm. Now,
So,
when you mentioned that, yeah, business and dealing with investments and people's money and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it's very difficult, and people might be lying to you. They may not be honest with you.
yeah,
Now, you've talked about sometimes that's just how the game was played.
yeah,
You went with the approach of, you know what, I'm going to try and change that game.
yeah,
But sometimes when you want to change that game, you hit that barrier all the time.
all the
So
time.
at what point do you go, you know what, I can't change that game, or I'm going to stick with what I want to do and make people kind of follow suit kind of thing? Like, how do you go through that mental challenge?
Well, and I think what you just said is the point. It's you decide that I can't change everybody. You realize you can't. People are going to be who they are, and not everybody was raised the same, and not everybody's had the same influences in their life. You know, and people that have had great influences choose to do bad things, and people who have had terrible influences on them choose to be great people. But it's choice. I think really what it boils down to is that we each have a choice. Every single day we have a choice. Every opportunity that presents itself to us is a choice of how we're going to act or interact or react. And I chose a path for me that it was just easier for me to keep it all straight. And I felt like if I took every single day with the attitude of I'm going to do the best I possibly can for the people that I work with or come in contact with, then I have less to worry about keeping me up at night. I mean, it's very simplistic, Fong. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. But that's the simplest answer. Is it became a matter of, you know, I need to go to sleep at night, and if I'm not treating someone well, or if I'm not doing what is in their best interest, if I'm doing what's in my best interest, and yet I have a fiduciary responsibility to that client, specifically speaking, you know, client relationships, then I can't sleep at night. So I have to do what is best. I have to do what is right. And that is sometimes, unfortunately, telling the client no. You know, that has happened on a few times, and I've had to fire clients over things before, where I said I just can't do that for you. What you're asking me to do, I just can't do.
Right.
But I'm sure you can find someone out there that will be more than happy to do that for you, and just be aware that you may not have the experience you think you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a matter of exercising integrity at that moment of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to sleep at night without being interrupted.
I think there's a lot of people out there who goes, you know what? It's a client. I can't fire my client. I need that client. I really, really need it. And for
Yeah,
you to choose your client and sometimes to realize you need to fire them and not
yeah,
have them probably makes it a lot easier on yourself and more productive. And you could actually spend more time on the clients you really want to work with, kind of thing.
right. Yeah, I mean when I had that realization that I actually could fire my clients, that was that was liberating. It really was. It was liberating because, again, it got to be my choice. And when you're early on in your career, especially in finance and securities, it's scary because every client becomes so precious to your bottom line. And I remember I was, you know, one of my first clients I ever had to do that with was fairly early in my career, and it was stressful. It was very stressful. But then it got easier once I realized that I was putting myself in a much better situation, not only mentally but also financially, because once I did that, I started holding my clients to a bit of a higher standard,
Mhm.
and myself to a bit of a higher standard. And that really kind of changed the game for me in business was that I said, I don't have to take every single person as a client. And I'm not looking for every single person as a client. I want to find the right person that I can do the best for and that will appreciate my efforts on their behalf.
Mhm.
And that kind of was a game changer for me.
Now, you've worked with so many different people and so many different types of people. Do you have a sense now? Like, is it a gut feel? It's like, yeah, something's off with this person, or do you have a series of questions or kind of checklist or something to kind of go, you know what, this is workable. I could spend more time with this one. This one's up.
Yeah, you do develop a sense. I mean, and I think we all have an innate ability to what's the word I want to use? Judge is too harsh, but to ascertain whether or not that is somebody that we should be hanging out with. And we may not recognize it when we're younger. We don't understand. As we get older and we have more interactions with people and we develop more of our own social skills, we develop a more keen insight of our, trusting your gut. And that is so very important in life, because if you have an inkling or a feeling and you can't quite describe it, you can't quite put your finger on why you're feeling the way you are, I always go, okay, I got to take a day and think about this. I got to sleep on it. There's something that's not quite checking out. And I find that when I let my mind rest and not think about it, ultimately an answer reveals itself. Or if it doesn't, and I'm still not quite 100% comfortable, I'll table that. I'll table that relationship. I'll table that client. I'll table it and circle back around to it a little bit later. And when I've not listened to that little voice inside of myself, that gut check voice, it's always cost me. So I've kind of learned over the years that to pay attention to that little whisper, that little gut check feeling, that little bit of something doesn't seem right. If I feel that, then I go, okay, I've learned to recognize it better now. And I think that comes with practice. Unfortunately, it comes with practice. You have to meet a lot of people that aren't being quite upfront with you. And so you just have to learn to figure it out. And, I've gotten better too at realizing that sometimes it's not so much that they're trying to hide something from me that's nefarious. It's more of they're not quite comfortable enough with me to share that information. And you'll get a sense of that too. And that's usually when I'll start asking more questions. In the financial services industry, we had to put people through a fairly lengthy interview process to find out exactly what it is that they were trying to accomplish, and how much they understood. Because you're in my particular field, in my particular company, we weren't looking for a client, we weren't looking for a transaction, we were looking for a partnership. We were looking for someone that we were going to be dealing with, and we were fortunate enough, in my career, I was fortunate enough to get to the point where I was actually managing grandchildren's money. Which is, that says a lot, because not only were you taking care of mom and dad, now you were taking care of the kids, and then you were taking care of their kids. And so that's not transactional. That's not transactional business. That's a business relationship. That's a professional relationship where you have now become a trusted advisor, not only to the individual, but in a lot of cases in my industry, you became a trusted advisor to the family. Every major event in that family that dealt something with finance, whether it was college education or a wedding or a funeral, you became a part of that family. And so it's you have to learn to trust your gut. You have to learn to trust your own intuition. And that is something, it's like a muscle. It's something that you can develop and get better at. And unfortunately, you got to deal with some stinkers in life so that you can, get a sense of whether or not somebody's being upfront with you, and then learn, is this just negative and I need to bypass this and go to the next thing? Or is this something where maybe I should ask more questions and then make a determination at that point? But that's true in anything. I mean, Fong, that's true in any career, any business, any aspect of life. Ask some questions, and if you can't come to the resolve that you're looking for, maybe it's time to table that for a time, and then come back and revisit it, whatever it may be.
You mentioned before how important having perspective is, being able to understand where people are coming from, being in their shoes. But for lots of people, they don't understand how to have that perspective. So how does one gain perspective?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do it, I guess. There's the way that most of us do it, and that's through trial and error, just living life and making mistakes, and and just stumbling forward into life. In this era where we have so much information available to us, via the internet and all social media, which is a good place. That's a good place to learn what not to do, is social media. But you find that there's a lot more ways to gain insight and gain information. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed doing growing up, I developed an intense love for reading growing up, and I would read everything I get my hands on. And I started realizing that if you pay attention to some of the stories that you're reading, especially if they're autobiographical or they're more of a real life story, there is experience within those stories to help glean from. And I think the people that have the ability to read a story and then actually take something that they learn from that story and use it in real life are the ones that can shorten the learning curve on that intuition on how to deal with people and gain perspective. Because a lot of it, that's what I did. I mean, I read a lot of historical biographies and found that a lot of wisdom was gained by reading what happened to those men and women in different times. And the funny thing about people, even though the times may change and the technology may change, people are still pretty much the same as they were 1,000 years ago when it comes to interpersonal relationships. It's just that we're moving so much faster now. Everybody feels like they're missing out on something, and I think that when we take a moment and step back and look at history and look at these stories, whether it's something that happened last year or something that happened 200 years ago, there's a lot of information to be gleaned and a lot of perspective to be appreciated, and learning that there are different perspectives that like I said earlier, one person's truth is their truth based upon their perspective. And so learning to realize that what you believe as adamantly as you do, somebody else may look at that from a completely different perspective and think that you're crazy. And yet, unless you take the time to learn from them and learn from their perspective, you won't understand where they're coming from. And we could talk about that we could spend days talking about that. I think that's a lot of the issues we're dealing with globally now, is that everybody who says, you're not looking at things from my perspective, and yet they're not taking any time to look at the opposite perspective. And so that's why I think we have so many tensions, and I think that's why we have so many misunderstandings in the world, is that we are failing in our ability to look at the world through somebody else's shoes or eyes or experience. But I think the more you read, the more you study, the more you listen, the more you will gain an insight and build a better perspective so that you can address the issues that you're going to have to address in life.
Now, you've worked with a lot of people on their investments, helping them grow it, helping them fix it because somebody else screwed up.
Yeah, that happens.
Have you kind of categorized as to what are the top reasons as to why certain investments don't work or why certain people don't succeed in investing?
Okay, so let me answer the second one first, and then remind me of the first one so that I can go back and touch on that one. But so why people fail, number one is they are, more often than not, they want to get rich yesterday.
Mhm.
And that's not really how solid investing works. Now, I know the news would like you to believe that you know, everybody that isn't under 40, that isn't worth $1 billion and owns their own tech company is a failure.
Mhm.
And I'm here to tell you, there are a lot more failures than there are successful stories out there. And I think, you know, they look at investing as they have a tendency to take far more risks than they should be taking early on in their investing career. Because investing, like school, like anything else, it's a progression. It's, you know, you start knowing very little, and over time you gain knowledge, and in that knowledge comes the potential for success or failure, which allows you more knowledge so that you can build on your successes and try to reduce or eliminate your failures. You know, so I think patience is probably the number one fault of a lot of people that want to get into investing. And sometimes, unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that want to sell you on the aspect that they have all the answers. They know what the markets are going to do. And that's honestly not true. I don't care what they choose, because here's the reality of that. If there was an individual out there that was so brilliant and so intuitive that they knew what the markets were going to be doing on any given day, any given month, any given year, first off, you would never know who they are, because they would be living on their own private island with everything that they could possibly have, and would not be wasting any time with somebody trying to invest a few $100s a month.
Mhm.
It just so basically everybody out there is what I call, for the lack of a better explanation, a student of the industry. Even the financial professionals like myself, we were constantly a student of the industry,
Mhm.
constantly reading, constantly studying. I mean, the amount of tests and educational curriculum that we had to complete on an annual basis is staggering. So if you're wanting to go to college, get a degree, go into your chosen profession, and never have to study again, finance is not the one you want to go into. It's kind of like being a surgeon. That's another one you just don't want to go into, because you will be constantly having to study and read and stay up on what's happening next, because markets change. Things in the global economy change dramatically, and we are a global economy. So now back to the first one, which is what was that again? Do you remember?
I kind of lost my train of thought too.
I know, I did too. I did too. I think it was so we had, you know, clients. Well, anyway, we might circle around to that, but basically, I would say, maybe this answers that first one. So it's basically, when you're getting into investing, the biggest mistake I think I see from a portfolio perspective is that they read something and they go, well, you know, I should be invested in that. But they don't do anything more than read of the successes of that investment or successes of that industry, and do very little about going in and looking at what's actually taken place over time.
Mhm.
You know, what is the projection of that particular investment going forward in the future? We'd have a anecdote that we would share with people, and we called it the mother-in-law effect. So by the time your mother-in-law came to you and said, I think you should buy XYZ company, it was time to get out of that company. Because it's like the markets move so globally fast. I mean, in nanosecond timeframes now. They actually have companies like Goldman Sachs and others have these massive supercomputers that do what's called market arbitrage. So the different fluctuation in prices between London, New York, and Tokyo changes every opening and every closing. Well, there is usually a slight margin of difference in certain prices, commodity stocks, whatever it may be. These computers are so big and they operate so quickly, they actually equalize those prices within seconds. So taking advantage of a market, even a global market, has become extremely difficult. So your best chance of being successful is hiring a good advisor that is a fiduciary, that basically isn't working for commission, that's actually working with you,
Yep.
as opposed to working for a commission check. Then I think you'll be a lot more successful, because they should bring to the table patience, knowledge, and insight, and that's what they should be doing. And at times, when necessary, a stern, calming voice.
So, as you mentioned, like the big companies have all these supercomputers and so many people looking at the numbers, doing projections and all kind of stuff. The common person who wants to jump into doing stocks and buying stocks and trades and all kind of stuff really doesn't have much of an advantage. Like it's hard for them to actually manage their portfolio.
Yeah, no, they have no advantage. I mean, I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how much you're on the computer. In order to have an outside remote possibility of doing well in the markets, you literally have to be eat, drinking, and sleeping 24/7 in the markets. And I don't know about you, but I was in the industry and I didn't even do that.
Yeah.
It's too overwhelming. It's just so your best option really is finding an advisor that's going to help you build a portfolio that is suited to your personality, suited to your goals, suited to your needs, and whatever your time frames are, and then working with them on a regular basis over the course of many years. Again, that's where the patience comes in, because you're not going to get there overnight. Do people get lucky? Yeah, all the time. I mean, they do. I mean, you'll hear stories all the time about people that, will tell you, I made 1,200% on this deal. And I go, well, did you sell? Did you sell the stock and take the gains, or sell the, investment and take the gains? Well, no. Okay. So what's it worth today? And a lot of times, people are lopsided, because they want to tell you about these great gains they had, but they don't ever tell you about their failures, or their inability to capitalize on that great success. So it's, again, people get lucky, but I would say don't believe all the press releases. They may not be 100% accurate. Most of your really successful investors, I've found, are very methodic. They're very methodic. They're not looking to catch the market sleeping, because it really doesn't. They're not looking for, and insider information is illegal, even though there are people that do seem to somehow skirt that a little bit. And I won't go down that road, but if they get caught, there's a tremendous penalty and jail time that goes along with it. So I think, if you're really gonna play the game, and you're gonna play it the correct way, it's a long haul game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and you've got to treat it like a marathon. You have to train for it like a marathon, a little bit farther every day, a little bit farther every day. And when you find something that looks exciting, I had clients all the time that I would say, if there's things that you want to invest in, if there's things that you feel like you really want to take a shot on, great. Let's set up an account for you that's your play account. That's your play money. And it's money that you don't care if you lose it or not. And never invest more than you're willing to lose. So if you've got accounts that you just want to get crazy with, then by all means, let's set something up for you, and that's your play account. But when that money's gone, it's gone. So think about that.
It's getting more and more difficult now, because with the phone, with all these apps saying like, hey, download this app. It's so easy for you to get into it, right? And it's always there. Oh, people are giving testimonials about how easy it is, how much money they're making. So anyway.
Yeah, I just say, we would call that, and I don't, so I'm going to use a phrase that I hope doesn't offend anybody, but we would call a lot of those apps and magazine ads and TV spots, we called them investment pornography.
Ooh.
Yeah, because they were titillating, they were exciting, but they were a little hollow, because not everybody had that same experience. And so on the surface, it looked great, but it was empty. And so we would caution people all the time, well, if you find something that you think is that great, bring it to us. We'll be happy to run down the research on it, and we would do that quite often and say, well, it looks pretty good. Do you want to use your play account? Or if it matched their portfolio, what they were trying to do, we would say, great, let's entertain this. Let's look and see how that's going to fit in your goals. And I think that was part of our success too, is that we're fairly open. I mean, we tried to be very open and realize that, not all great ideas emanated from our office. That there were a lot of very bright and brilliant people out there. And in fact, a lot of our clients were incredibly brilliant people. And we were very fortunate to get to work with a lot. I mean, we're talking, a lot of attorneys and doctors and, even some politicians over the years and very, very insightful, very, very bright individuals. And so I think you have to realize that you don't have all the answers. Nobody does. And looking elsewhere outside for those answers isn't negative. That's actually, I think, a positive when you can say, you know what, I don't know. Let me go do some research and get back to you, and let's see if we can figure something out, if it makes sense.
Now, over the last few years, the big things are crypto and NFTs and all that fancy stuff. Now, is that part of the here's your play money account or not really?
So cryptocurrency is boy, that's an odd duck in the pond. It really is. There's from my perspective, and I'm gonna have to couch my comments so that I don't say something that I don't want to be offensive to anybody, but at the same time, cryptocurrency is one of those things we just frankly don't know enough about. It hasn't been around long enough. And it's not regulated. So, and we've seen tremendous abuses already within the systems where somebody, with $1 billion of cryptocurrency suddenly disappears overnight and, nowhere to be seen. And then you have institutions like the city of Miami that are converting to become, the crypto capital of the world. And I think their mayor is actually being paid in cryptocurrency now. So, you've got, and that's when I usually say, okay, when there is such a wide spectrum of success and failure and how it can be used, and the fact that it's not regulated and it's almost non-traceable, in the financial securities world, we look at that and say, okay, this is absolutely an opportunity to money launder. And to be funding terrorism or any number of things, because you can't track the money. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's what I want. I don't want to track the money. I don't want it to be trackable. They don't want to pay taxes or whatever, but the government is really, most countries' governments are very smart about closing loopholes so that they get their taxes. In fact, they have entire divisions that are set up to do nothing but close those loopholes. So I think cryptocurrency is interesting. I've got a very small account that does not have very much in it because I'm playing with it, and it's money that if I lose it all, then I lose it all, and it's not going to affect my ability to pay my bills on a daily basis. And what I've learned is it is extremely volatile. It moves on the suspicion of news, not necessarily hard data, but it moves on the suspicion of news. Which is even more so than, say, the general stock markets are. But a lot of times populist sentiment or popularity, if I see that that's what's moving the price, then I really struggle with it as a long-term investment, because it's like, well, okay, if somebody can go online and say, I just bought $1 million worth of this cryptocurrency, and that cryptocurrency suddenly goes through the roof, I'd be willing to bet the guy that just said they put $1 million into cryptocurrency probably sold out several days after the announcement because the price was driven through the roof. It kind of reminds me a lot of penny stocks back in the 70s and the early 80s. You could literally drive the valuation of a stock simply by spreading a rumor. And cryptocurrency is a little bit that way for me now. I'm not saying that it's not something you shouldn't be looking at. I'm just saying from an investment perspective, it's more of a get rich quick kind of a deal right now than I see as being a long-term investment portfolio. It's working its way into the system faster than I think it should. But maybe that's because I'm still a little bit old school. It could be that, and I am a little slow to adopt new technologies. But cryptocurrency, it's fascinating. I find it very fascinating. I think it could either be around for a long time or it could be gone in 5 years. And it's hard to say. There just isn't enough. There's not enough data on it yet for it to really be what I would consider to be mainstream viable, like a mutual fund. Mutual fund is mainstream viable. There's a lot of options out there. Everybody's heard of them, and everybody's had some experience with them, whether it's through a 401k or their personal investing or some government pension plan. Everybody's familiar with it, and they've got very distinct, defined rules of how they're supposed to operate. So, cryptocurrency could be that in a few years, but it's just not there yet. What was the other thing you asked me about?
The NFTs?
NFT. Yeah. NFTs. NFTs to me is like, it's like the new collectible. It's like the new baseball card. I mean, again, it's fascinating. I mean, I wish I could come up with an NFT that would sell for, several $1 million. I don't think I'm just quite that in the know or bright enough yet to figure that one out. But it is a younger crypto and NFTs are definitely that 30 and younger crowd type of investment. It's got that appeal to them. The digital world. So I think based on the market that you're talking to, NFTs make more sense to the younger investors, so to speak.
Right.
The thing with NFTs is, are they really an investment? Are they really that fungible? I mean, or is it something that you buy it, you hang it on the wall, and the only way you're ever going to sell it is if someone really, really wants it and is willing to pay more than you paid for it.
Right.
So it's more of a to me, NFTs are more of a true collectible than it is any kind of investment. But you will see. You never know. I mean, if the NFTs in 200 years from now are selling for millions of dollars, like a Picasso or a Van Gogh or something like a Van Klimt, something like that, then great, it worked. But until we get to that point, I think it's too early on to be able to tell. So it's something if you're going to invest in it, don't invest more than you're willing to lose.
Well, and I really respect that perspective, because lots of people goes, I don't understand it. It's going good. I really want to try it, but then they stop in their tracks and they don't do anything, right? Whereas you're saying, hey, come up with a budget. If you're willing to lose it all, put that in there and see what happens. At least you're in the game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of investing, a lot of business. I mean, just pure business. And you are very familiar with this, but it's trial and error. A lot of times it's trial and error. It's trying to find a better way to build a mousetrap. And I think the best way I've ever described this, I would prefer, and I lecture, in fact, I'm lecturing next week at the university again. I do this on a quarterly basis now, but I always tell them, I said, I would prefer that you go out and fall flat on your face right out of the gate, and then realize, okay, that didn't work. And then get up, look at what happened, look at what you did to get to that situation, and then take the steps necessary to avoid that again. Without failure, you're not learning. Right. If you're not trying and failing, you're not winning. I mean, winners will tell you, every time I've ever talked to a highly successful individual, regardless of their background, they will tell you how many times they failed before they got it right.
Right.
I even have people in my own life close to me that go, well, everything you've done has been successful. I go, what press release are you reading? Yeah. And I would joke with people, yes, I'm a 35-year overnight success.
You didn't open your closet. Look at this.
Yeah, look at my closet. It's a mess in my office closet. I don't even dare keep the door open. Yeah, I mean, failure is the name of the game. If you want to succeed, go fail. I know that that sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. It
Right.
really isn't. I mean, go fail. Go try something and fail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wrote more than a few books that will never see the light of day because they were terrible. You know, I've gone in speaking engagements and fallen flat on my face and wondered what the heck happened there.
Right.
I've invested in investments and lost my shorts. I've put money into businesses and lost my shorts. You know, I mean, you know, my gosh, but I learned from every one of those failures, and
Mm-hmm.
every one of those failures pushed me that much closer to success.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
go
all
fail.
those all those journeys, all those failures, all those learning lessons learned led you to say, you know what? I'm gonna start writing children's books.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
what was
yeah,
that like? What did people go, you're doing what now? Or
yeah.
were they like, oh, that sounds right?
Well, so this, so writing children's books actually came from, I was writing a lot of industry papers and articles in the industry, um, and I thought there's got to be a better way to help people understand what I'm doing, because when I would write, my writing style, of course, in the industry, it's very technical. And so a lot of big words, a lot of, you know, a lot of diagrams, a lot of, you know, spatial theory going into play.
And now
And
you have to
it
go
was,
down to 2 syllables.
yeah. And realized that the audience for those papers were basically guys like me, you know, men and women like me in the industry that understood the lingo. And so I took a page from Warren Buffett, who said, if I can't explain something simply, I don't invest in it. And I went, perfect. So, you know, I started early in my career trying to find ways to explain very simply the concepts I was trying to teach people about investing. And I started coming up with anecdotes or stories, and being you know, growing up in the South, it kind of came quite naturally for me. I could spin a yarn with the best of them, they say. And I started using stories to teach, and the story stuck with people. And that's, you know, I wrote a book for salespeople about 11, 12 years ago, that it was unique in its kind. It was very industry specific. It was focused on people that did wholesaling of financial securities products.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, you know what? I think I could do better. So I wrote another book called The Emperor's Dilemma, which is a business fable. And that actually won an award. It got second place in the San Francisco Book Festival back in 2011. But it was more of an adult children's story. And that's what got me thinking. I was like going, okay, this business fable, a lot of people remember the story. They don't remember where they heard it, but they remember the story and they remember the details of it. And I went, okay, I think I need to reduce the age of my audience. I think if I could do for more children what my grandmother and grandfather did for me,
Mm-hmm.
explaining to me in the way that a child learns, through stories, through storytelling, bedtime stories, whatever it was, that I think I could get this to stick and start creating more opportunities for our youth to get positive feedback, to see that they can make mistakes and have trial and error and succeed and be okay, and that you don't have to be a child prodigy at the age of 6 years old, because
Mm-hmm.
not everybody's going to be a child prodigy. Not everybody's going to play, you know, in the National Hockey League in Canada, nor are they going to play in the National Football League in the United States, or, you know, the FIFA in Europe. They're not going to, you know, not every kid that loves to play soccer is going to make it to that level.
Right.
But there are things that they can learn at a young age to help them further their lives and be more successful. And that's, so the books kind of started from lecturing in the business arena to high school and college students and to professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started telling stories. And pretty soon I got to be one of the, you know, more popular people to speak at a lot of the conferences that I went to, because I spent most of my time telling stories with a purpose behind it, you know, kind of like Aesop's fables, as it were. There was a method to my madness. And so now the stories that I'm telling, like this one that, in fact, here, I knew I had one, like this one, ta-da, Pablo, the plate painter of Mazatlan. I don't know if you can see that very well, but that came about because, I was in Mexico and I saw this guy painting and was fascinated with how quick he painted and how good he was. And pretty soon, people would come by the table and he would say, yeah, well, is there something special you want? And they would go, oh, well, could you paint me laying on the beach? Could you paint me parasailing? Could you paint me hiking? He goes, sure. And he would like whip it out in like no time flat. And I thought, wow, okay, now that's not a skill he learned overnight.
Yeah.
So I was there on vacation for about a week, and I went by every single day that he was there, waited till he was done towards the end of the day, and I would start asking him questions because I was inquisitive. I've always been naturally curious. And he told me his story. And he told me about growing up in a small village, and his family didn't have much, and he enjoyed art and painting and drawing, and his mom introduced him to a teacher, and that teacher instructed him over years, and over his lifetime he became this individual. And I was starting to calculate how much he was making a day in Mexico, and this is clear back in the 1980s. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, the equivalent today would be several $100,000 a year, that he was making in Mexico painting plates for tourists. And I thought, unbelievable. Here's a global success story, someplace that people may not necessarily think that there would be success, and yet this man has created a wonderful life for him and his family. He's, I lost track of him, but I'm sure he's probably no longer with us now. I mean, he was rather elderly when I met him, but here's an individual that took something that he enjoyed doing and created a life for himself and taught others, And so I said, there's a story there. So I started telling the story when I would speak at high school and college events back in the 80s. And I thought this would make a really good children's story. So after I wrote the business fable, I went, I think I could write children's stories. Cool. And I started writing children's stories, and my first children's story has met with far more success than I ever thought it would. I mean, it hasn't sold a tremendous amount because it's only been out for a very short period of time. But the industry accolades have been staggering. It's very humbling. And we've already got another one in the works, a Christmas story for next year. We hope to have done, and hopefully a series after that. But again, I failed an awful lot before I ever wrote a good one. So,
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the success of that. And I'm looking forward to all the next one and the next one and a whole series of them.
Hope so.
Our time has flown by very, very fast. I've been very fascinated with everything you've been saying. I've learned a lot about investing as well. But before I let you go, I got a few more short questions, but one last formal question for you is, let's say if I put you on the world stage and you have a few sentences, a few minutes to share one message that you want everybody in the world to remember Craig for, what would that one message be?
There's a quote, one of my favorite quotes, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. That's what I would share.
Very good. Very powerful. And as I'm sure lots of people can tell, you have a lot of enthusiasm in everything that you do, whether it's numbers to explain why, what your thoughts are about crypto, and then also writing children's book. You're very enthusiastic. And that's one of the reasons why I gravitated to you when you spoke, was like, this person is energetic. I really want to get to know him and hear more about what he does. I got last 5 questions before you go, and they're fast questions. You're stranded on the deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. What would that be?
One food to eat the rest of my life, no consequences. Oh, pasta.
Hollywood calls and goes, Craig, wow, your life is amazing. We want to do a biopic on you, but you get to choose who plays you. Who would you cast?
Does it matter what era they're from? Does it have to be a modern movie star?
Doesn't matter.
Cary Grant.
Awesome. Cary Grant shows up at your door and, hey, Craig, I got casted to play you. Let's hang out. Let's get to know each other. boy, I'm hungry. And you go, hey, buddy, don't worry about it. I'll go cook you up something great. What's that special dish that you can cook?
Oh, I can cook a lot of special dishes. I would probably.
What's your 10-course meal that you're going to make?
Yeah, I would probably say, honestly, bourbon Asian sticky ribs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That sounds great.
yeah, my own recipe.
If you were in a car ride, and for whatever reason, there's only one song that's stuck on a loop that goes over and over again. You're in this ride for hours. What's that one song you don't mind listening to and you won't get sick of?
Oh, man.
You're already thinking you're getting sick of it.
Yeah, I know. I'm like going, what could I tolerate for that long? Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen.
Oh, wow. You'll be headbanging the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
And before I get to my last question, give me a number from 1 to 4.
3.
1, 2, 3. So how would you relate success to a storage box?
Ooh.
So how is success like a storage box?
Actually, it's more similar than I initially thought, but success is merely a culmination of your experiences. And one of the things that we can do as human beings is that we can hold on to negative or positive, and that's our choice, going back to where we started our conversation. And what we choose to put in that storage box will determine our future success or failures. So I would say take all the positive things in your life, all the successes, and remember, I look at failures as being positive too, if they move you in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And I would say that storage box now becomes your file folder. And anytime that you need to go back and revisit something when you're going through something tough in your life, whether it's personal loss, whether it's financial loss, whether you're just having a bad day, or your boss yelled at you, or a client yelled at you, go back to that storage box and pull out those positive things that reinforced your reason for being where you're at today. Mm-hmm. Our lives are a culmination of the experiences that we've had in life. And that storage box is our ability to go back and access it, like memories. The storage box is our memories.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well done. That's how success is like a storage box. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, get your books, what's the best way?
We have a website, craigtheauthor.com, and you can see it. You can get it, come there and get information about the book and our future projects. The book is available on Amazon, and it's available through Amazon in the US, Canada, England, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Japan, and Brazil, I think. So pretty much anywhere. So
all the above.
Pretty much. And India. Did I say India? I think it's available in India too. Anyway, but no, just Amazon. Just go to your local Amazon.com. Mm-hmm. And the book is there. Pablo, the Plate Painter of Mazatlan. I think the Business Fable is on there too. We may or may not pull that one here shortly. It's been out for about 11 years. Oh, wow. But Pablo we're focusing on children's books now. I think it's a good read. Your grandkids, your kids, if they're between the ages of 3 and 8, are going to love it. We're getting such great feedback on it. It's such a positive story. Very inspirational.
Awesome. I can't help but notice, did you go harpooning?
That's a spear gun. Yeah, that's a spear gun. So yeah, being on the island, you have a tendency to pick up things that you would never think of doing when you live on the mainland. Cool. So yeah, I've got boogie boards in the garage, a surfboard in the garage, and I've got a spear gun. So, and fishing poles. So I am living the island life.
Well, congratulations on that. Once again, thank you very much for your time. Any last words from you?
Go live your life and fail a lot, as long as it leads to more success. Thank you, Fong.
Good words to live by. So for everybody, make sure you get in touch with Craig or pick up a copy of his books. Great guy. I had a great time. This time has gone very, very fast, and I do not regret any of it because it was absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much. For everybody else, his name is Craig. My name is Fong Chuan. Until next time, today is the day to unlock your peak potential. We'll see you later.